Hey there, welcome to Unit 5, Lesson 4. Today's actually one of my favorite lessons for this unit because when we get to the assignment, it's some pretty shocking stuff that we're going to talk about. So I want to get right into it. What we're going to do is talk today about conformity and the pressures of the 1950s for everybody to basically try to be the same. So conformity itself is behavior in accordance with socially accepted conventions and standards. In other words, you wanted to keep up with the Joneses. You wanted to do what everybody else was doing. You needed to look the same, act the same, dress the same, behave the same, like anything. You needed to present yourself in the way that was to be expected in the 1950s, which put a lot of pressure on families. This happened due to the economic boom that was taking place in the 1950s. So people had more money to buy more things. That coupled with mass media and pop culture really showing people in television shows how to dress and how to act, and the music and everything basically just saying like this is what is like acceptable and what is expected of society at this time. We have very, very high levels of conformity. Um, Thankfully, today we don't have as much of this. We're much more okay with people being more individuals, but that wasn't the case in the 1950s. So, perfect prime example. You can see here, the example of these men who are working in offices at this time. And if you look, they're for the most part wearing gray or black flannel suits, white button up, got a tie on, have the same kind of hairstyle. Like there's no individualism that is really happening. So men have these pressures on them of needing to be able to provide that American dream for their family. And so they were expected to go out and be the breadwinners and make the money and bring it home so that their family could have the things that they wanted. By 1956, most jobs that men, specifically more white men, were getting were going to be more white collar jobs. And they're called white collar jobs because you would most likely wear a suit, which would require you to wear a white button up shirt that is collared. So, AKA white collar jobs. These are going to be clerical, professional, managerial, people working in offices. And that was kind of the expectation. If you wanted to make more money, you needed to get yourself a nice swanky office job and not necessarily be a blue collar job and be, like a plumber or electrician or something. Don't get me wrong, those jobs were still very important, but they didn't pay as much as these office jobs did, where you would have to go and get that secondary education in order to have these jobs. This creates with it the idea of the standardized employee, what is known as the man in the flannel suit or in the gray flannel suit. We see a loss of individuality. Everybody's supposed to wear and conform to this same look, like you see in the picture over here. They would even have people that would take like personality tests to make sure that they would fit into the culture of that office. So everybody, like I said, was kind of the same. With that being said, the struggle for men to provide for their family was rough, but that doesn't mean that men were the only ones struggling at this time. So women are going to be definitely struggling as well to make sure that they're keeping up the look and the appeal of their family and make it look like they've got everything together at all hours of the day. They're supposed to be that thread that weaves the family and the community together. Their career opportunities were limited in the 1950s, but they are increasing. We are seeing more women that stayed in the workforce after the war was over. But for the most part, women are expected, as they have been for decades and centuries, really, at this point, that they needed to stay home once they were married with the kids and become that 1950s happy housewife. They're expected to marry pretty young. If you weren't married by the age of 30, there must be something wrong with you. You needed to get your man quickly so that you could start popping out kids and have that family. This is going to lead to a very, very large baby boom. And y'all are familiar with this because we all see people say the phrase now of like, okay, boomer, like those boomers that were born during this time period, they are now the ones that are the oldest generation that we have in our country. But you can see these are your boomer years. So right when the war is over, the soldiers come back, they scoop up their women, and then they start popping out a whole bunch of babies. And so We go through this huge boom time period, and then we see, the numbers of births kind of drop down, and then they start to go back up again. But this is your boomer time period, basically from about 1945, 46 to about 1964-ish, right? So that's what we're going to be kind of looking at. So, as I said, there was a lot of pressure during the 1950s for every family to be able to show their wealth off and show that they were a family that had everything put together. Now, behind the scenes, you may have had a family where a husband was a drunk and would beat his wife. The kids were not properly taken care of. But when you go out in public, you better make everybody believe that your life is put together and is that perfect little 1950s family. So everybody was trying to project that vision of the perfect life. The man was going to be in charge, the woman needed to be obedient, and the children needed to always be well mannered. They also see a rise in conservative, so Republican conservative beliefs and religious beliefs go on the rise. So you wanted to take your family to church every Sunday and show everybody in the community that everything was perfect and put together, and everybody knew how to behave during this time. You also saw a big push to show your success through material items. Does the wife have the newest stove in the kitchen? Do we have the newest washer and dryer that is available? Like, what can you show everybody else? Like, well, they've got this, so now we have to have it as well, kind of mentality that is happening. Here you can see an advertisement. This advertisement just like blows my mind that this is an advertisement for ties. So it's cut off at the front, but it's for this tie company. And it says, show her it's a man's world. Like, this was the job of the wife. She needed to be obedient to her husband and basically provide anything that he wanted, so that because of course he was going off to work and working really hard every single day. And she was just sitting around at home, not doing anything, right? So all of this push to get all the greatest things that were coming out leads to a huge rise in consumerism. People have got more money and they want all of these new products that are coming out, these new electric appliances like washers and blenders and freezers, leisure products like televisions that are new. We're going to eventually see the introduction of color television sets and stuff like that as we get a little further into the decades. Record players, barbecue grills, new fancy lawnmowers. Like, these are all the things that you got these and you were able to show off to everybody about how great your life was. Again, the economy was doing well, so a lot of people were trusting it and they do a lot of purchasing on credit. And they would go out and buy the newest things as products became outdated. This is a big change. Think about this today with like a cell phone. So like, I have a phone, but 2 years from now, my phone is still going to work just fine, but I'm probably going to go and get the newest phone because it's kind of what we do today to keep up with the Joneses. Like, we want to show like, I can not only like afford these things, but I want to be able to afford the newest one that is out. Like, my PlayStation 4 might work just fine, but now there's a 5, so I need to go get the 5, right? That idea started in the 1950s, where people would say like, oh, like, my car is fine, but now there's a better car out, so I'm going to go get it. Or my grill works just fine, but now there's a cooler, more advanced, awesome grill, so I'm going to go buy that. And this idea of not keeping things until they don't work anymore and then replacing them consistently leads to this rise of consumerism. Advertising during this time had a lot to do with this. We see a huge increase in ads, especially because people are watching more television in their homes. And so these ads are going to tell people exactly how they need to look, how they need to feel, how they need to behave. And all of that just continues to add to this conformity. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is the idea that, again, you needed to go out and show everybody your success. And so we start to see a lot more things happening outside of the home, a lot more leisure time that is available because more people have cars and they have more time on their hands, they start going out more. We're going to see people going to drive-in movie theaters like you see in the picture here. We're going to see fast food restaurants like McDonald's pop up, and people go out and like have family dinners instead of the mom always cooking in the house. You're going to see more freedom for teenagers as they are able to have their own cars, and so they go out and have parties and do those kinds of things. And then we see more travel, more family vacations starting at this time. So here you can see an advertisement for McDonald's. You can see, of course, I'm going to bring up Disneyland because this is going to come around in the 1950s as well. Disney World doesn't come around until 1971, but Disneyland opens in the 1950s. And so this is like a big deal, that this destination where the families can go. And if you could take your family to Disneyland, well, then that was something special. And you most certainly would go and brag about that to show kind of like your status and how good you were doing, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about here. The idea of conformity is making sure that everybody was behaving and presenting themselves in a certain way and trying to basically show everybody how perfect their life was. So, and don't get me wrong, we do still do part of this today. Just think about like Instagram and like what's actually put out there and how we want people to see how perfect their lives are. So there are 3 tasks for today. Don't freak out about that. If you're watching this video, it's most likely because you were absent. So you won't have to do task number 3, which is just our exit ticket that we're doing at the end of class. So really there are essentially 2 tasks to complete. The first one is the Good Wife discussion post. So you are going to go through and read this article. Now this article isn't an actual real article that was made, but the expectations are real. So you're going to read what basically a good wife was expected to do during the 1950s. And then you're going to answer these 3 questions. And then you need to go read somebody else's response and comment on that in order to get full credit for this assignment. When you are done with that, you will do the Happy Housewife assignment. You have 4 documents to read that are here. They are not long at all. And then you have a table to fill out. And then once you get that done, you'll submit it. So these aren't very long assignments. You're going to look at those 4 different sources. You're going to tell me who the author is and the date, and then answer these questions, and then answer this final claim here. So that's what you're going to do. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. And other than that, that brings us to the end of this week. And next week, we'll start the civil rights movement. And I will see you guys then.